Hi, I'm Ted Shire, and this is the first broadcast of JETT Radio, a show focused on community service as a means of sustainability. My guest is Joe Wood, a leader with Celebrate Recovery, and Joe has a powerful story that illustrates key principles of personal and community sustainability. And this broadcast will culminate with his story to drive the point home that helping others helps us personally. What is sustainability? It can be defined in terms of what it takes to achieve lasting sustainability, and that is everyone doing their part to better the community. Why sustainability? Most nations are becoming less sustainable because people have been satisfied with cultural standards. If I provide for myself and my family, I don't need to do more. And as a result, governments have taken over responsibility for those in need, and that has not had a good track record as a whole. This approach lacks the kind of community that helps people become self-sustaining. However, outreach to the community helps us while we help others. It's actually one of the best ways to spend family time, so there doesn't have to be a time conflict. It helps us personally, and for me, it was the main help to me during an identity and career crisis that burned me out. In terms of perspective, I approach sustainability from the perspective of the Christian faith, because that's what allowed me to become more sustainable. The purpose of the show is not apologetics. It is how faith interacts with personal sustainability. Other resources cover apologetics well. So for me, I have burned out at least 4 times in my life. In high school, I was in 3 sports and burned out all of those. As an undergraduate, I overstudied and burned out at classwork. Then in grad school and beyond, I never allowed myself to take a break to fully recharge during years of research and teaching. And I burned out of both of those. So I think there's a pattern there. As God provided a second chance as a biologist, it was clear that the former unsustainable patterns had to change. I began to take evenings and weekends off. What a novel idea that was. And as a new way of living began to settle in, God broke through spiritually. Instead of wanting to stay in bed, I was getting up on my own, and I was refreshed. It was also difficult to go to bed because I was excited about life again. Because I spent so many years living unsustainably, the topic of personal sustainability was very relevant to me. So, Joe, if you had any periods of burnout, if so, could you tell us about those?
Yes, I'd like to, Ted. I've had some episodes of major depression where I've seen a doctor and had prescription medication. And it's first time was when I was recently divorced many years ago, and I was just lost financially. I was a wreck. I was really sad because I've been I've been really battered by my marriage, and now it was ended, and I was so lonely and felt so lost. And another time is when much later, like 5 years ago, and I really started to develop relationships and get into relationships with people, and that was relatively new to me because most of my life I had a very small, select group of people, and then I joined a church and I got involved with so many others, and that was overwhelming.
Thanks. So that kind of leads us into the topic of burnout and defining it. So what is burnout? And we can define it as a pattern of energy mismanagement that leads to the inability to continue in an endeavor or a relationship. So in terms of the stages, there's physical, mental and emotional exhaustion. There's shame and doubt from identity issues. There's cynicism and callousness from hopelessness. And there's failure, helplessness, and crisis. And I've experienced all of those stages, unfortunately. So it involves a physiological component. And the energy to continue in that situation has run out, so the individual finds themselves in a position of being unable to continue. And for me, that occurred mid-fall 2002 through about the summer of 2003. Energy had bottomed out, and I was just existing, just confused and foggy thinking during that time. And so, it leads into a series of questions. So why do we burn out? And again, energy mismanagement is the physiological factor that leads us into burnout. And identity issues are what cause us to mismanage energy and decisions. They're at the root of that. And I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that I was going through an identity crisis when that was all happening. So unsustainable thinking and living patterns are based on fear and resentment. And really, they're pretty good summary categories because in terms of how it relates to identity, because fear is what we think may define us, and resentment is based on what we think has defined us. And so with fear, we get into protectionism, and we shut out the good with the bad so that the end result is that our needs aren't met. And a good resource for that is Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. And I love to read, and so I'm going to be mentioning some of the resources that have been helpful to me. And in terms of circumstances, we become too risk averse. For instance, staying in the wrong job too long. With relationships, fear can lead us to keep score, to protect ourselves. And thus we're unable to see and receive the good in our relationships. With regard to resentment, circumstantially, resentment and blame can come about concerning missed opportunities instead of taking responsibility for those opportunities. And in relationships, again, keeping score pops up, and it can make us unable to see and receive the good in our relationships. We have an over focus on what's wrong, and again, a good resource for that is Emotional Intelligence by Dan Goleman. He does an excellent job of explaining that issue in there. So, Joe, can you relate to any of that? What are some thinking patterns that were unsustainable for you?
Well, one of the things is that I can be so timid sometimes that I allow my relationships to lapse because I'm not giving feedback. I'm not presenting my needs, and so that relationships sometimes just die from lack of communication.
Yeah. Anything else come to mind, or?
Also, I tend to have trouble sometimes believing the best in people, and that is causes me to sometimes to act out and be hostile, and for really no good cause.
Yeah. Yeah, I know with me, and probably not alone here, but we can get into obsessive thinking and behavior patterns about controlling things that we can't control, and that wastes a lot of energy. And so, it brings up the question, what's at the root of control issues? And it's insecurity about what we rely on for our identity. And, we end up reacting to perceived threats to our identity, and those reactions can waste a lot of energy. And much of that can be unconsciously driven by our emotional memory. And again, emotional intelligence describes that kind of process. But control is our way to cope with fear and resentment. It manifests itself in several different ways, and people control to get what we want or to feel safe. And some of those behaviors for me included people pleasing. Stayed in the wrong major too long trying to please my parents and made some wrong assumptions there, assuming I'd be rejected if I switched, or it'd mean that I was a failure or something like that. And almost the opposite was true. It was just something that was in my head alone. And something that happened to me was domineering behavior. I had been in a legalistic, domineering church environment that was unhealthy for me. And I was afraid of displeasing friends if I left. Whenever someone left the church, they were spoken about as if their faith was on the rocks, or they had fallen away in some way, shape, or form. And so my decisions were fear-based, and eventually that caught up with me. So, Joe, can you describe some of your coping mechanisms?
Yeah, one thing, I sort of had a tendency to create my own world, and sort of so that's much easier to do when you keep to yourself a lot and not interact with others. Uh, Without other people to keep you honest, you just tend to dwell in your own thinking. And with me, I would start to get the wrong ideas about people. I would tend to think more of myself and less of others, and drift off and to my world I created, and didn't actually exist.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing. So, we can talk about the effect of those control reactions. And because it's a reaction, reinforcement takes place. So reinforcement of fear and resentment is what occurs because we reinforce what we react to. So when we react to something, we affirm to ourselves that it's real, even if it isn't. And so we both have had experience with that, solidifying something in our thinking based on erroneous assumptions. And if we reinforce the wrong things, we trap ourselves. And I know I felt trapped for years in that kind of thinking. And, it's something that we have to be vigilant about. Wasted energy occurs in proportion to the amount of and level of fear and resentment. And by the way, fear and resentment, it turns out, are identity, our core identity indicators, because of, how we define those, and because they're the core identity indicators, they're also the core energy wasters, because our identity determines how we use our energy. And if fear and resentment are left unaddressed, ultimately we burn out. And this can be compounded by other facilitators of burnout, namely weak relationships, speed up the process of burnout. And that occurs because we don't take in enough of the good. The net result is that we run out of energy. So, given all that, why would anyone choose unsustainable paths? And probably no one knowingly chooses unsustainable paths. We just we fall into it. And one of the reasons we do that unconsciously is because of cultural pressures that shape our emotional memories and things that we're unconscious of. So if dominant cultural standards create pressures in societies, and these pressures make it seem normal to pursue a path that isn't healthy. And people often feel that they have no choice but to succumb to what cultural norms dictate. And I was in this mode of thinking for years. Thought the thing that would save me were those cultural norms, the job, the marriage, and that, everything will be okay. But the background is I grew up in a very unstable environment. Parents fought continually. They divorced when I was in 8th grade. And I needed acceptance, and thought that throwing myself into academics and sports would help establish some sort of sense of security. Had no idea that those pursuits were slowly becoming my identity, a broken, false identity based on my own performance. I thought that working hard in school and finding a job would establish a sense of safety and stability. And this pursuit went on many years until it wore me out. Performance-based identity issues led to a downward spiral for me due to energy mismanagement. Year after year, I worked too many evenings and weekends without taking the time to fully recharge, or to recharge at all, through sufficient quality time away from work. And stage by stage, things fell apart. I was in research for several years and then left it. And then I tried teaching and left it after several years. The entire time I was filled with insecurity and fear about the future, and a constant nagging background anxiety that made me feel invalid as a person. So looking back, I realized that I couldn't take a break because my identity was too dependent on my work. Ironically, my performance identity greatly decreased my ability to perform, and not surprising looking back, but at the time it sure didn't make sense. And in the fall of 2002, things climaxed, my energy bottomed out, my thinking was confused, and I was not sure I could keep up with the teaching load. I lost my identity, I was in pain, and became suicidal for the first time. So, Joe, what was life like for you before recovery?
Well, I was into deep depression, anxiety off the scale, and sort of wrapped up in my own self, my cyclical thinking, that this not believing any good in others, not being willing to trust or reach out for help, and I had this this victim mentality where if things didn't go my way, or it was because other people were against me. It was not a good place to be, and I went to the doctor and got treatment. It was never enough, and there was no hope in that. It was relying on other people who I had no control over for my source of happiness and self-worth, and that was an unreliable source. And I found that developing a relationship with my Savior was really a turning point. Is not reliant on what other people did, but my relationship with Christ.
Yeah. Let's talk about the turning point a little bit later.
Okay.
But did you, before recovery, did you feel like you were always on alert? And after this, we'll go to a break. But tell us a little bit more about that. Did you feel hypervigilant? What was that like?
Yeah. I felt like I had to do everything myself. I had to watch out for other people and try to figure out what they want, and then to try to live up to other people's expectations, but not really believing that I could, and that it was unsustainable. And I needed something, a solid ground, and I wasn't finding it.
Yeah. Yeah. So in a short while here, we'll go to a break. But when we come back, we will talk about some common examples of unsustainable paths that are reinforced by cultural norms. You know, the standards, job, marriage, things like that, and explore those a little bit. So let's go to a break.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs,
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're gonna make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money-back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
Hi, it's Ted Shire again with JETT Radio, and my guest is Joe Wood. He's a leader with Celebrate Recovery, and he's here to share his story with us today. So, Joe, thanks for being with us. And when we left, we said we were going to start up again with some common examples of unsustainable paths that are reinforced by cultural norms. So probably what comes to mind for most of us right away is job status and marital status. And some people want job status to get the relationships or the recognition they want. For example, some lawyers burn out at their jobs because it's a difficult job, and they become overworked in a job they don't like. If they primarily went into it primarily for the job status, and they find out that status isn't enough when the fit is poor. And there's plenty of lawyers that enjoy what they're doing, but it's one of those jobs that's hard enough that if it's not a good fit, then you tend to burn out. With marital status, sometimes people get into unsustainable relationships from the cultural pressure to be married by a certain age. and people fear being left out of social life. Relationship management issues can also lead to an unsustainable path. For instance, people can respond to hurt feelings in unsustainable ways. And again, emotional intelligence describes some of those examples, like getting even. So, for example, when we're hurt, we want to respond the way that we were treated. That's our natural response. And we think that it'll be a quick fix to our hurt feelings. And quite the opposite effect occurs. Hurting others in response to being hurt actually reinforces the negative feelings and drives the relationship towards unsustainability. And so those are some of the unsustainable paths that we can take. What's the transition process from burnout to sustainability? We can define personal sustainability as living in harmony with God, ourselves, and others. The journey to personal sustainability can start from either burnout or from partial sustainability. So many people think they're doing well because they have met or exceeded cultural standards. However, cultural standards are not sustainable in and of themselves. And so really, people are not doing as well as they thought they were. Job alone, marriage alone is not all it takes to live a sustainable life. You can have lots of resources, but broken relationships. You can have lots of resources and friends, but no time for exercise or reflection, no time for faith. And really, the personal sustainability journey never ends, not in this life. And so we will always be at some level of partial sustainability. Some area of life will always be a little bit out of balance this side of heaven. So, turning points. So there's things that life, opportunities that life can present us that allow us to get onto a sustainable path. So there's end of rope turning points. There's second chance turning points. I know I've had experience with both of those. If we get sick and tired of being sick and tired, it presents us with an opportunity to turn to God and a more sustainable path. If we get a second chance at a job or a marriage, it's an opportunity to respond to the grace shown to us. So, Joe, could you give us some input on turning points in your life in terms of recovery and how that turned your life around?
Right. Well, one of the biggest things is when I realized it's not all about me. When I lived in my own little world, I was limited so much to the great, big, wider world out there that was waiting for me. That I was too scared to really be involved in. And Celebrate Recovery provided a safe place for me to explore relationships, get to know some people, and let them get to know me. I had so many secrets that I was so afraid that I'd be condemned. But I found they grew a lot smaller once they're shared. And I found that people are just wonderful. I mean, I could probably go to anybody there and talk with them. It's just because we're all focused on the same thing. It's we're all on the same page, and it's about recovery and working that. So I've been really blessed to find this safe place where I can talk about things I really rarely talk about anywhere else. And so it's been a real blessing to me, helped me put me in perspective, and even more importantly, it's helped put my problems in perspective. The things I struggle are not as big as they loomed in my own mind.
Yeah. How long did it take for that to sink in terms of realizing you had a safe community?
Well, it did take a while because I was very paranoid with others. And so it was really a struggle for me to learn to trust. And I guess it's just something you learn by doing. And it eventually I had a lot of good experiences of people who were affirming and not judgmental, not trying to fix me, but people who just accepted me for who I am. And I really needed that at that time. Mm. So I needed to accept myself, and I needed help.
So you don't need it now?
Oh, I still do. Yes.
Yeah. No, we all do throughout life. So where do we turn to for help? So left to ourselves, the chances of maintaining a healthy, sustainable life are not very good. I know this from many years of isolation myself. That's what I used for safety. I thought that isolating would keep me safe, and eventually that caught up with me. But once we realize that, it's only natural to turn to an outside source for help. And I think the best place that we can turn is to our Creator. And the Creator knows how the creation works best because He designed it. And if we don't seek the Creator's input on how to live, we cut ourselves off from the best source of sustainability and guidance. So the Creator's plan, He actually has a sustainability plan, and that is faith, hope, and love, which allow us to manage our energy for the long term. And a good reference for this is Tim Keller's Every Good Endeavor, and N.T. Wright's After You Believe. If we don't live according to faith, hope, and love, we tend to burn out. So not only in relationships, but also in life. And so what keeps us from turning back to the old life? The desire to not burn out again, and the desire to not be in pain. But we don't have to be stuck there. We don't have to be stuck in pain. There are sustainable alternatives. Faith, hope, and love are not just good ideas. They are essential to living a sustainable life. So, there's been a lot of research on brain chemistry, and so people know something about what healthy brain chemistry is. Our Creator designed our minds to work best on a brain chemistry that is produced by things like faith, hope, and love. And they produce the opposite type of brain chemistry as fear and resentment. And essentially, fear and resentment produce sewage water brain chemistry, as termed by Henry Cloud in Boundaries for Leaders. And we can actually, if it's goes on too long, we can actually burn out chemically. And those effects can last for years. So the environment that our brains need to develop the right chemistry, again, is described by Henry Cloud in Boundaries for Leaders. Positive environment, reducing stress hormones, and enabling executive functions. So with a positive environment, it needs to be a place that minimizes fight or flight responses through a positive tone to the atmosphere. That maximizes identity security through healthy boundaries, and that maximizes executive functions, attention, inhibition, and working memory, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And the executive functions can be maximized through a structured environment that enables better thinking and problem solving. Stress hormones can overwhelm the brain, can overwhelm brain function in sufficient quantities, and so we need that positive environment to keep those stress hormones at bay. An overabundance of stress hormones is exactly what happens in a toxic work environment full of fear and resentment. Things that contribute to it are things like the tone, the way things are said. Negative tone creates stress, and fight or flight response shuts down higher brain functions. It's a natural reaction to danger that stops thinking in order to act immediately to ensure safety. And so, again, the positive environment is what we need to enable those executive functions. Attention, the ability to focus on what's relevant. Inhibition, the ability to not focus on what's irrelevant. And working memory, the ability to retain and access the relevant information. So, how much time does it take to make a transition from burnout to sustainability? I can share some personal examples. In the midst of my career crisis burnout, God sovereignly provided a new job as a regulatory biologist, and it ended up being a much better fit, but it definitely didn't seem that way at first. There was a significant learning curve. And so much of the veterinary and regulatory material was unfamiliar to me, and I was convinced that I had made a wrong decision for over a year. It turned out to be a 3-year transition period from burnout to sustainability, from my teaching job to my biologist job. And then God broke through relationally, and that's an important stressor there. It was a relationship experience. As the learning curve eased in my new job, it was clear that it was a much better fit than teaching and research. God had sovereignly given me a second chance in spite of my poor choices. I couldn't help but be thankful, and I didn't want to take the credit for that. It was the most thankful time of my life, and I was so thankful for a second chance after so many mistakes. And as Rick Warren has studied, thankfulness and gratitude are the healthiest attitudes. And so the turning point, before this time, before the turning point, God had pressed me to get right with him relationally over and over for at least a year. And I went on vacation after that learning curve started to ease. And I was hiking in Yosemite National Park, praying by the Merced River. And he pressed me what seemed like the 1,000th time to get right with him. And in frustration, I said, I can't, because I didn't know what to do. And at that exact moment, he provided a direct thought: I will work with you. And that statement was inherently relational. It was what I'd been waiting to hear my entire life. And when I realized that God wanted a relationship with me, and the way that he expressed himself was the most gracious and loving way that I had ever experienced, I knew that it was something that I wanted. So what he expressed clarified that he wanted a relationship and not my performance. And so coming into relationship with God became doable, unlike my former attempts to impress him. It clarified that I was to depend on relationship with him, not my performance. And because of that, the oppressive weight of performance identity came off. There was a peace that he would take care of me through the good times and the bad times, no matter what. And a relationship for the good and the bad meant long-term sustainability. So, I think we'll go ahead and take a break. But when we come back, we will talk about why that relationship with God is enough for long-term sustainability.
Credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
See 'em here, see 'em there. You got bad credit, we don't care. Metro Ford's on everywhere.
Visit emetroford.com for your guaranteed credit approval. Good credit, bad credit, no credit. Everybody drives with guaranteed credit approval at emetroford.com. Visit emetroford.com today.
Hi, it's Ted Shire again with JETT Radio, and my guest is Joe Wood, a leader in Celebrate Recovery. So we're coming up to the home stretch here, and we're going to finish out with Joe's story of recovery and how reaching out to others helped him personally. I want to finish out with some of the breakthrough period that God started in my life. So staying power. God is enough. And, it's funny because the first 4 months after that decision in Yosemite, I was so worried. I thought, I'm going to go back to the way things were before. And I kept thinking that for about the first 4 months. Am I going to go back? Am I going to go back? Is it going to last? And God answered that question. So after an entire year of consistently experiencing God's peace, I knew that my relationship with him was going to last. His presence has never left, even through a few dark and difficult years. And one of the most obvious ways that I know that he's enough is that I was truly content for the first time. I didn't need status positions or popularity to validate my identity. I was content to enjoy the Lord and work an ordinary job for the rest of my life, if that's what God wanted. Another affirmation that he is enough came during a period when I was sick in January of 2007. After that sort of honeymoon year, 2006. And I was reflecting on all the changes God had made through his presence and peace throughout 2006. I felt that I'd finally lived a year of real life, not dependent on the approval of others. I felt that I could have died and been satisfied with going to be with the Lord in a much better place, having accomplished little in my earthly life. I no longer needed accomplishments to validate my life, because he is enough to validate me. It was a reset experience. It was so good, it was so peaceful, that it was as if none of the past had mattered. It was as if God wiped out the past in my emotional memory. And so there is hope to the end. God can reset a person's life at any point, even the deathbed. And so how do we remain sustainable after a turning point? It depends on what we reinforce. And so we want to reinforce the thoughts and behaviors that lead to long-term sustainability. To live sustainably, we must reinforce faith, hope, and love. And Philippians 4, verses 4 to 13, is a good summary of healthy thinking patterns. Contentment, apart from circumstances, is the theme of that section. And in that section, Paul says things like, I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. And he also says, I can do everything through him who gives me strength. And basically, he's talking about being able to withstand anything that life throws at him. He's not referring to some over-the-top experience that he has superhuman strength or something like that. And so when we reinforce faith, hope, and love, we reinforce healthy thoughts and behaviors. This principle of dwelling is throughout the scriptures. For instance, in Psalm 1 through 2, it said, whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. whatever they do prospers. So, Joe, how do you monitor your thinking?
I've had to train myself. So I have a tendency to thoughts of despair, and if I catch that early, it's not too hard. I just because I have a tendency when I'm frustrated or not I don't see a quick solution. I just I see that worst case scenario, and I feel like resigning myself to that. But once I notice that, I turn that around, and I look for the best case scenario and work for that.
Yeah. So is that catastrophic thinking rational?
No, it's not, but it's self-fulfilling. So that you can get caught in that and not realize there's anything better.
Mm-hmm. So how do you deal with irrational thoughts?
By being aware of them and making choices. Using that, we all have that power of choice, and I found for many years I didn't use it very much. I just allowed my natural tendencies to be in control. But now I have a better way. Like with fear, I used to be so overcome with fear, and that's because I was basing everything on my ability to accomplish things. And it's a big world out there. I was never big enough for that deal with the world. Mm. And so I placed my hopes on something much more solid foundation. Mm. And that is Jesus. He provides for me that assurance that I cannot find in myself.
Mm. Can we discredit irrational thoughts?
You can choose whatever you choose your thinking, and your thinking determines to a large part your life. And I've learned that changed my thinking, changed my life. Mm-hmm. And it really does work. I never gave it a chance before. Yeah. And it's wonderful how I really do have far more control than I ever knew.
Yeah. No, I've noticed for myself that I need to discredit some of the irrational fears that I can have, and it works. It's not always easy, but it works. I can be noise sensitive, and react to noises, but the challenging those thoughts makes a difference. So, we need to reinforce healthy thinking and behavior because we automatically default to whatever we're saturated in. So we automatically default to those cultural standards of fear-based thinking, resentment, and performance identity that are based on comparison. And those are the messages that we're saturated in. So those are all forms of unsustainable thinking. And we have an alternative to those. Dwelling on faith, hope, and love in a healthy environment breaks those unsustainable thinking patterns. And so now we want to finish up with Joe's story here, and if Joe, you could elaborate on the role of Celebrate Recovery in your personal recovery.
Yeah, I'm so grateful because it provided for me, like I said before, it was a safe environment, and where I could be me. It was okay to be me, and this really opened me up to be able to examine who that is. Who am I in an objective sense, with a new perspective on, and it's an environment of safety where I could explore where I'm at, my thinking, and provides a natural focus for recovery. I learned to think outside of myself. And that's where my problem lied. I had all these lies that I was living, that I had to overcome. And I just they were never exposed because I didn't have any place I could really talk. I could talk about it, and it was great because in Celebrate Recovery, there's all these loving, supported people, and they helped me get to know myself and be real. And it was a wonderful breath of fresh air. I love how I was able to blossom and grow and beyond what I could even imagine. And wonderful.
Did in the beginning, when you first went to Celebrate Recovery, did you think, oh, I'll go through the 12 steps and I'll be out of here in 6 months or something like that? What were your initial thoughts? Did you think about it as a long-term thing?
I didn't know. At that time, I was really desperate. I mean, I was very depressed, and I was just getting worse. And so I was like drowning in the ocean, and this was like a life preserver. So I didn't really think that far ahead. I couldn't. I just had to take each day, one at a time. It's the only way. I just praying for the grace to get through each day. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't even handle thinking too far ahead. But now I'm grateful. I'm so grateful that, and by focusing, and I remember when my sponsor asked me to make a gratitude list. It was like, I didn't understand that at all. I mean, my life is down in the pits, and you want me to think of things to be grateful for? I was even, a little bit angry. But, after I did it, I found it really worked. I mean, to bring me up and be focused. And I began to have hope. And that's such a precious commodity. Mm-hmm. You don't really know until you don't have it. And just how precious it is. And I'm so grateful that it was also really simple, really. It was very simple. It was so simple, I tended to discount them, but they're really effective. So I've learned to be grateful and be positive and trusting in God, mm-hmm. and really recognizing Him for who He is, the all-powerful being and capable of all things, and He that rules the world, and contemplating all them things, I just had to put my trust in Him, and once I did that, it was just my recovery really took off, because then I started believing the promises instead of the lies. The promise that God loves me, and He wants the best for me.
Yeah, weren't there some tangible ways in which you experienced God's love? I mean, wasn't there some incredible levels of stress relief associated with that particularly endeared you to God?
Yeah. Because one thing was all the paranoia, I used to worry constantly that I just wasn't good enough. I couldn't please people, and that everybody was turning against me, and that was all that workspace fear, that I was inherently didn't have any value, and it wasn't until I and realized how much God loves me that I was able to face the problems. Like one of the first things, I turned my life over to Jesus Christ in 2009, and it was things began to happen in my life. And one of the biggest things was the internet pornography. It scared me because it had so taken over my life, and that's all I thought about. And it was it was the only thing in my life that I turned to. It became more and more desperate. I had to have more and more, and it was never enough. And then it scared me because it took over my life, and I was thinking of doing things that might endanger my marriage. I was even thinking about going to a bar and picking up women, and that was so not in my character. But that scared me so much that I went and I turned my life over to Jesus Christ, and not really knowing if he would even accept me, because I was so down on myself at that time. But my joy was so great. I reached out to him, and I really felt that he was there, and that he loved me, and that was so incredible, that so life affirming, that it changed my life.
Mm. And it didn't come back, though. That's what was so amazing, right?
Oh yeah, it was gone. Very first thing I prayed, Jesus, please set me free from this, and he did.
Yeah.
I don't even have a desire for it anymore. It's gone.
Because it was a kind of a constant source of stress.
Yes.
Was it not?
Yeah, it drained my energy. I was so afraid I'd be found out, and it would ruin my marriage, and it really frightened me terribly.
Yeah. So now you are involved in organizing retreats, things like that for Celebrate Recovery. How has that impacted your personal recovery?
Well, this has provided challenges, and that's really it's helped me grow in character and as a person. I found that instead of running from my problems, but facing them, gives me power over them, and through prayer and meditation, I redirect and refocus my life in new ways. And a great way to do this is doing service work for others. And it's been especially challenging for me because I'm naturally such a shy person, that intensely shy, that this has really forced me to be greater than I am, and such a blessing that I can only do this on faith. It's entirely outside my experience, but I'm so grateful that what this is doing in me to make me a more fuller person with greater character and just outward focused.
Yeah. Hasn't that outward focus given you quite a bit more energy?
No.
Yeah, and purpose, life purpose, increased your energy level.
Yeah, my life has meaning now. It's more than just about me. It's bigger things, and it's given me a new incentive, a new excitement, and a new joy that I've never experienced before.
Yeah. And we're coming down to the final minute here, but could you share the victory that you had with your budget? Give us short background there, and then what happened.
Oh, so great! I just you just go along and you think, well, I'm just at a low point in my finances. It'll soon get better, but it didn't. And I realized when I had to use a credit card just to buy groceries, I realized that I really had a problem here. And first I panicked, but then I started praying. I sought direction. I seen some financial counselors, and allowed rational thinking to work through this. And so we worked all this out. We got our budget, a workable budget, and we're sticking to it. And then we thank God that it was really just that simple.
But you were able to make a purchase.
Yes. I saved up money and bought a really nice car, probably the best car I've probably ever had, and it's so wonderful that to experience that reward for
cash.
Cash.
And you paid cash. So
I paid cash.
All right. Well, hey, with that, we'll wrap it up. And Joe, thanks for being with us today and sharing your story. And I know it's not the easiest to come out and share it publicly, but thank you for doing that. You've helped us all. So, and thanks for listening to Jet Radio, and we will be back with you next time to talk about community sustainability. Bye for now.